2003, this is The Ones Who Succeed. I'm Campbell Barron. Welcome to the program. If you're new here, hi, I'm Campbell. I'm a 17-year-old entrepreneur, business enthusiast, technology and media nerd, and someone who's really always interested in kind of learning about new technologies. And that is why I'm excited about today's guest. Today's guest is named Jose, and he's the co-founder of a company called Lyrebird. And that name might sound a little bit familiar to you. Lyrebird. I feel like I've heard of it. You've probably heard of it before. It's been all over the press. It's even featured on a Shane Dawson YouTube video. We're going to talk about that. But essentially what the company and the startup did was enable you to clone your voice. And immediately when I say that, people might be a little freaked out, but it's actually really interesting. And some of the applications for cloning your voice go way beyond prank calling your friends. So we're going to talk about that. In addition, Lyrebird was recently acquired by this podcast editing software called Descript and is now a feature called Overdub, which essentially enables you to fake your voice in your very own podcast. We'll talk about what Overdub is, why I'm such a big fan of this technology, and the origin story of Lyrebird. Jose is based in Montreal, but he's originally from Mexico. We're going to get into all of that. So without further ado, my conversation with Jose, the co-founder of Lyrebird, and today's guest on The Ones Who Succeed starts now. So first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
And so can you first introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Jose Sotelo. I was the founder of a company or co-founder of the company called Lyrebird. In Lyrebird, we created software that allowed to copy the voice of anyone using a few minutes of audio. And recently, so last year, we joined forces with another startup called Descript, which is a really cool tool to edit podcasts. So I'm happy that you are a happy user of Descript.
I'm a huge fan. Honestly, I saw the incredible, very slick promo video and just was blown away. It almost looks too good to be true. And so I had to try it out and now I'm a paying user. And so I'm a big fan. So I'm definitely really excited to talk to you. I think if we can kind of start just by talking about kind of your origin story. So you're not from Canada, you're from Mexico. How did you end up in Montreal in the first place? And what were you like kind of growing up?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a like random, like, how to say it, like a random consequence or like a random set of events that took me there. So I'm from Mexico. In Mexico, I studied applied mathematics. And when I was studying this, I really learned for the first time about something called machine learning. And I kind of like fell in love with it. I thought that it was like way more interesting than whatever other things that I was doing during my degree. And so after I finished my degree there, I was looking for places to learn more about this and to use this kind of like knowledge. The first thing that I did actually was to work in a central bank of Mexico, which is like the opposite experience of like doing a startup. Like it's a serious job.
Yeah.
I actually had to wear a tie every day, and in my desk I had a spare tie in case that something wrong happened to my normal.
That is definitely very different from a startup for sure.
Yeah, so I really didn't like this kind of like way of living, and in particular I did not like that there's two ways of doing statistics. One is like you verify the assumptions. Another one is like you check how well you predicted the results. And so in these traditional places, like you do more the first one than the second one. And I really did not like that way of doing things, because I thought that it was not useful.
Yeah.
And so during this time, I really realized that like learning more about machine learning is what I wanted to do next. And so I was looking for different places to study this. And just by really a random coincidence, I got in touch with like the director of like the lab at University of Montreal, whose name is Joshua Benjo, and who is one of the pioneers of a new way of doing machine learning called deep learning. And this was really like a coincidence, because at that point, like he was not as famous as he is today. Like to give you an example, he received like the Turing Award last year. But at that point, he was starting to become famous, but he was not definitely as famous as he is right now. And so I got in touch with him, and he invited me to come here to Montreal and to study with him, which was like really like a golden opportunity for me to learn more about these things. When I was in my master's, I was working especially in an area of machine learning called generative models, which is related to how can we make the computers create new things, like things that don't exist today. So can we make a computer create a new poem? Can we make a computer write a new song? Can we make a computer create a new picture? Things like that. Actually, with the new tools, like with deep learning, the progress on this area has really exploded in the last few years. And so as part of this, like one of the projects that I was working on is like, can we create, let's say, sentences that sound really like people were speaking? And can we control them? Can we like control the accent? Can we control the person that it's speaking? And so based on like some of the research that I was doing at that point, is that we decided to start the company.
Now, the immediate thought I had with Lyrebird, when I first saw it. Now, I'm a big tech nerd. I'm not a programmer per se. I've dabbled, but I'm just really interested in technology. And so my mind was blown, right? And I think it's incredible. But when you it seems like when you want to start a startup, especially a company, and are looking to kind of build something, it seems like you're really trying to solve a problem, trying to tackle a problem, right? So what was the use case you imagined for these synthetic voices? Because we both agree that it's really cool and it's very futuristic. But did you have something in mind that you were like, oh, this is what they're going to use Lyrebird for? Especially in the early days when it was kind of just like record a minute of audio, type something, and it sounds like you.
Yeah, so I would say that not specifically, and probably maybe that was one of like, let's say, the weaknesses of Lyrebird in itself. One thing though that I am going to mention is that actually at the very beginning what we wanted to do was something even more futuristic, which was like creating virtual avatars of people. Not only like on the
video phase 2, eh?
Exactly.
Wow.
And actually we created some demos. Even there's like something available along this along this subject on YouTube. But I would say that indeed, like it was not like it was more, let's say, science-based startup and let's say technology-based startup rather than application-based startup.
Right.
And so actually that's one of the reasons that we decided to go with Descript, and that's one of the, let's say, strengths that we found in the union of both companies, which was that Descript has a really clear use case and a really clear goal of being the best tool for editing audio and video in the world.
Yes.
And so in that scenario, like it's easy, it's really like easier, and you can focus all your energy on solving one specific thing rather than just exploring the area of what can happen when you can generate voices. So yeah. Yeah,
and I read that you guys, or I did some research, and it seemed like Lyrebird raised some money. Was Lyrebird ever a part of Y Combinator? Yeah, so talk about that story. And did you end up moving to Silicon Valley for a little bit to build it?
Yeah, so during the summer of 2017, like we were invited to participate in Y Combinator, and we went to California to spend 3 months there. I think it was a really interesting experience. Something that you have to keep in mind is that the three founders of Lyrebird, we were PhDs in artificial intelligence. So it's really, I would say, maybe not the typical distribution of a startup where you're going to have like maybe one person more focused on sales and one person more focused
you didn't have your co-founder and then your technical co-founder, right?
Exactly.
You guys were all kind of technical.
Yeah, but so I would say that because of that, and also maybe because of that, the experience was a bit maybe different for us, in which like the experience was more of a learning, kind of like the other things related, like not to the technical side of the business. And I think like on that part was great. One challenge that we had at that point though was like something related to what you just asked before, which is that there was not a very clear
what problem are you trying to solve?
Exactly. So this is really against, let's say, the typical knowledge of Y Combinator.
And so you go to Y Combinator. You guys are all these technical, extremely technical co-founders. Definitely, probably all PhDs, so much higher educated than the rest of the batch. Just usually, right? Usually, it's kind of.
I mean, not really. Like there were many people like us in Y Combinator. So
did that surprise you?
Not as much, because I would expect that you would need like some level of technical skills to create some startups. But on our batch, for instance, there was a company called Standard Cognition. I don't know if you have heard about this company.
Never heard about this company.
These guys are like seven PhDs in AI creating something like Amazon Go for everyone. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
So there were other companies with like people even more educated than us.
With high qualifications.
Yeah.
And so after that experience, I'm very curious to find out. I mean, I've heard a couple of things about Montreal. I mean, I really like it. I'm just a few hours. I'm in Toronto, and it seems like it has a very prominent AI technology scene, especially in Canada. And it seems like there is also an interesting startup scene going on. But let's be honest, that startup scene doesn't begin to compare to Silicon Valley and San Francisco and Palo Alto. So what did you not, while living in Silicon Valley, think, you know what, maybe I should just, try to get a visa or live here or what kind of compelled you to come back to Montreal? Or did you kind of just have to come back to Montreal?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So for sure, we considered staying in California. I think it's obvious, as you said, that the environment for startups in California is really probably the best in the world. I think like there is a few reasons that we decided to come back. Like one was, for instance, that we knew more people here. So let's say that we consider that to get started, it was maybe a good idea to come here to hire people that we already knew. Mm-hmm. And maybe eventually to open an office in San Francisco. So this was like an option that this was the option that we considered. Another thing was that we already have a lot of support in Montreal from other people. For instance, Joshua Benjo. Yeah. And so this for sure helps when like needing to get things done. One other reason is that like the price of life is way, way, way cheaper here in Montreal compared to San Francisco. So we were really scrappy, and we are still really scrappy. And so this was one of the things that we considered. I would say that there's a few things that are reasons really to not, let's say, go back to Montreal and like instead to having stayed in San Francisco. For instance, I think the biggest one would be that there's way more people that have gone through the process of creating a big company, of running a startup, like in all different positions, like even from the position of going like from 0 to 10 people, but also like from 10 people to 1,000 people. And so I think this is one of the things that we suffered the most here in Montreal, because it's way more difficult to find people like that. But yeah, overall, I would say that I was satisfied with the decision to come back to Montreal. I'm not sure if I would go back in time, if I would do the same thing, but at the end things work out pretty well for us. So at least it was not a disaster, let's say.
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't a disaster. And so if you're thinking back to the early days, I kind of touched on this, but I'm really interested. So you're building this startup. It's using AI to clone your voice. And you started it in 2017. You kind of go through this Y Combinator experience. It seems like that experience was pretty beneficial in terms of your success. So I'm curious to find out, I mean, I'm sure there's stuff you can't exactly talk about, but if we're talking about Lyrebird and, this software, it uses AI to clone your voice. AI was kind of beginning to become a buzzword in 2017, and it is certainly a buzzword now. AI, machine learning, you hear it everywhere, right? It seems like AI is going to eat up the world. It's being integrated into social networks like TikTok, even to a higher degree. It's definitely having its moment. But how specifically, when you say Lyrebird uses AI or machine learning to clone your voice, how specifically does it work? Without getting too technical, I'm just kind of curious to learn about how it basically takes, a minute of my recording or 5 minutes of my recording and like actually develop a voice that sounds pretty legit.
Yeah, so I recognize completely what you say about AI becoming more of a buzzword and like just something that people abuse, let's say. I think in our case, and this was probably beneficial for us, like let's say when discussing with investors, like we really had a justifiable reason to say this.
Yeah.
As I said, sure. Like the three founders, we are PhD students in AI. Mm-hmm. the way that we use it actually is that we, let's say, before collected a big data set of voice recordings, let's say with like thousands of voices. And then we use this to train models that are going to try to predict, let's say, what makes a voice unique. So I'm going to try to extract, let's say, some piece of information, some key to make your voice distinguishable from other voices that sound like you.
Yes.
And based on this information, let's say, like we call this the DNA of the voice, let's say, but it's really like a set of characteristics that a neural network is able to extract based on some audio recordings. And then using this key, we were able to generate, like we had a different model that it's able to take this key and then generate audio that sounds like that specific key. So
I see.
So that's kind of like the
so
way
it's
that
based
that
in
it works.
keys. Interesting. I see. That's very interesting. So I guess my next question is: it seems like over your kind of course building Lyrebird and then becoming part of Descript, the technology has just gotten better and better, and I think in 5 years there'll be a point where you won't be able to distinguish any difference between my voice and my fake voice, and that's really awesome and also a little bit intimidating in their own ways. But what specifically is the deciding factor that makes this technology constantly get better and better? Is it just more code you're writing? Is it just a better understanding in regards to how the software works? I'm sure this is an incredibly simplistic question, but just for the average kind of consumer listening and myself, what is it really that's going on that improves this technology?
Yeah, there's a few things and it's complicated. The answer to this question is complicated. The first factor is just like the advance of science. So science in this area of machine learning and deep learning is moving really fast. And there's like many new ideas for new algorithms that are published like every year related to let's say generative models or even like models that are going to generate voices. So there's one. The second one, I would say that it's just like the quantity and quality of audio that we get access to. So these models are models that work by taking data and then trying to copy the patterns of the data. And so if you get more high quality data, they get better and better. So I would say that's the second factor. And then the final thing is just like a lot of work goes into this. So we spent like all of our time like just trying to improve the results of these, just trying to make it slightly better. And when you compound like 1% better
over time, like, it makes
time,
a big difference. Yes, 100%.
Exactly. One thing that I would say is that actually the 80%, like getting the first 80% quality, let's say, results, it's really like relatively easy, relatively straightforward. But like the higher that you go, the more difficult that it becomes. So like going from 80% to 90%, it's
so
like
difficult.
Way more difficult than the first 80%, I would say.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can understand why, right? Like if you're kind of going from 0 to 80%, you kind of solve all these bugs. But if you get to 80%, you've kind of figured it out mostly. And then basically to get to 80 to 90, you're essentially like in the tinkering process. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm obviously not a programmer in the AI space, but I'm assuming that it's a lot of trial and error.
Exactly.
So I'm interested to find out if we're kind of looking back in 2017 when the company was started, Y Combinator obviously gives you money, and then you kind of come back to Montreal. Did you attempt to raise another round of financing at that point? And did you raise another round of financing? Did you talk to investors?
Yeah, we raised, at the same time as going through YC, we raised a seed series from US-based investors.
And how do you disclose how much you raised?
So it was a couple of $1 million that we raised.
So you raised $2 million. And what was your ambition and desire for this $2 million?
I mean, what we wanted to do is really to figure out what is going to be the way that we are going to use this technology to create a big company. As I said, like at that point, it was like maybe a more exploratory thing. And like we were really thinking about like this avatars thing. But yeah, at the same time, like it was really just like, let's say, trying a few things, trying different ideas on seeing how we could make people use this technology.
And what were some of the use cases you imagined people would use it for good? Let's talk about those first.
Yeah, for sure. So we had a lot of like different ideas, and we had a few different, let's say, proof of concept projects with some companies. Things, for instance, like having a video game company that wants to create a character inside the video game and wants that character to have, let's say, unlimited ability to speak. Because right now it's...
Right. Yeah, that's smart. Because then you can get a voiceover artist to basically just say the 2 minutes of Lyrebird recording, and then the engineers and the account managers in the back can just type away.
Exactly. But it's not even about like not needing to record the voice actor anymore. It's more about like providing things that were not possible before. Like, for instance, before, like if you have one of these like exploratory games where like it's kind of endless, and there's some things that are computer generated, on these kind of games, you cannot have dialogue right now, or you cannot have spoken dialogue, simply because you cannot record like an arbitrary set of lines. At some point, like the voice actor will not have enough time to record.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true. And that's a real use case. Yeah. That is a very real use case.
Yeah, so this is one example. Another example that we liked a lot and that like we really gave some time to is like, there's people with a disease that makes them lose their voice. It's like one of the, actually there's a few diseases, but one of them, like probably the biggest one, is like ALS.
Yes, yeah, I was thinking, yes.
So for people, like these people, for instance, like they know that they are going to lose their voice when they, like, as time passes, but they have some time, let's say, to potentially record high quality recordings of their voice. So for them, like this kind of technology was really, really, really useful because...
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps actually. That's crazy. Yeah.
Because, and one thing that I want to say with respect to that is that we don't realize it really, because like you are never like thinking about like, oh, what's going to happen if I am going to lose my voice in a few months from now. But actually, this is really an important part of our identities. This is how we communicate with other people. And so for people that are in this situation, like it's really one thing that makes them conserve one thing that they really care about. And so that's one of the very, let's say, positive use case of this technology.
Incredibly positive. And to be honest, I really asked that question because I was curious, and those are some legitimate use cases. And so when you were raising money, was it pretty easy for you to raise money? Was it hard?
No, I think we were really lucky in that we were in the right place at the right time. I would say like there was a lot of interest in AI and in audio when we raised our seed series, so it was relatively easy. Also, it was not like trivial.
Yeah, and were the VCs, how did they feel about you coming to Montreal afterwards? I am sure, I'd like to bet money that one of them at least said, "Hey, where are you going?"
Yeah, so it's a bit complicated because when we were taking this decision at the same time, like it's not straightforward. Like there are reasons to stay in California, but it's not a trivial decision that it's a bad idea to come back to Montreal. So there's
for sure.
There's like evidence of other companies that go away from San Francisco and also they are successful. So I think like they saw this as a kind of like they supported the decision. Like they like no one. Also, we have really high quality investors. Like our investors were really, really great, but there was not like as much of a pushback against taking this decision. But it was more of like, guys, like think about all the consequences, and these are the good things, these are the bad things. But think about all the consequences, and we'll let you decide. So for sure, they wanted us to take this decision.
To really put thought into it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so it seemed like your launch strategy with Lyrebird was, you know what, instead of pretending that this technology doesn't exist, we are going to show everyone, we are going to have this PR campaign, we're going to do a Bloomberg interview, TechCrunch, we're going to have some fake Donald Trump voices and show everyone, hey, this is out there. Be aware that this is out there, this is being worked on. And as a result, that dragged quite a bit of publicity. And I mean, and if you're I feel like there are two possible, first impressions. I think on one hand, there's probably my first impression, which was, whoa, that's so impressive. Like, I'm a startup nerd, I'm a tech nerd. I was incredibly impressed when I saw what Lyrebird could do, even back in 2018 when I first found out about it. And so, what was the theory behind your launch strategy, especially considering the fact that you were not shy about putting it out there and letting people know that this technology can and will clone your voice?
Yeah, so this was a really complicated thing, and we spent a lot of time thinking about it. I would say that let's say as researchers working on this area, we really have a kind of like moral obligation to let people know about the technology. Like, I think people are scared, or like we have for sure received like questions of like, oh guys, but are you really sure that you want to work on this? Like, even we received some emails saying that we are going to start World War III because of working on this. So for sure, it's a technology that can have like damaging consequences and that can be a bit scary. At the same time, I feel that the worst possible consequences of this kind of technology would happen in a world where no one knows that this technology is feasible. So if we really wanted to, let's say, profit from this and like, let's say, not caring about the consequences for the world, like, there could be ways like maybe trying to make a fake audio of Donald Trump saying that Bitcoin is going to be accepted as a regular, like as a recognized coin in the US or something and then profiting from there. So I think that really like the best protection that we as a society can have against this kind of people with bad intentions is to have a really open showcase of what's the technology and what are the limits and where is it today and like where could it be in a few years from now, so that people can have time to prepare, let's say, mentally against people wanting to attack them with this technology. That being said, of course, like I think we were a bit aggressive with this, but I think that we were not like reckless in the sense of, for instance,
I'm not calling you reckless. I don't think it was reckless at all.
No, but I mean, I've been called reckless because of this. So, but an example of a limitation that we put into the technology since the beginning, and we really wanted to do it that way, is that we did not allow people to copy the voice of anyone else, but except the voice of themselves. Yes. And we enforce this by asking them to record a specific set of sentences.
Yeah, that was never repeated, right? Yeah. Exactly. I remember seeing one saying, "I don't want to run for politics, but I want to do laundry," or something. Totally random.
Yeah. Yeah, so imagine one of the sentences is something like, "I understand that this recording is going to be used to copy my voice." So in that case, like either you already have the ability to create that recording in the voice of the person that you want to copy, which then makes our technology like meaningless for that specific kind of attack. Yeah. But also like, you see, it gives access to people to test the technology, to see it with their own voice and really to put it to try. And we have found that this really... Actually, like our biggest publicity event in the life of Lyrebird was neither of these things.
It was not Bloomberg?
No, it was not Bloomberg. By an order of, I would say, like maybe 5 to 10 times bigger. It was just one YouTuber that created a video.
Can I guess? Was it Shane Dawson?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I remember seeing that. That's true. Coming up, what it's like for a famous YouTuber to feature your startup. I'm of course referring to Shane Dawson and the startup Lyrebird. My conversation with Jose Sotelo, the co-founder of Lyrebird, on the Ones Who Succeed continues after this quick message from our sponsor. This episode of The Ones Who Succeed is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform with thousands of classes in business, marketing, technology, design, and more. You can take classes in social media marketing, video editing, entrepreneurship, you name it, they've got it. So whether you're trying to deepen your professional skill set, start a side hustle, or just explore a new passion, Skillshare is there to keep you learning and thriving. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the call to action. Skillshare is offering the Ones Who Succeed listeners 2 months of unlimited access to thousands of classes, all for free. To sign up, go to Skillshare.com/succeed. Again, that's Skillshare.com/succeed. That link is how they know the Ones Who Succeed sent you to start your first 2 months now. You can find that link in the description of this podcast, and it would be awesome if you can support our show by supporting our sponsors. So one last time, visit Skillshare.com/succeed to start your first 2 months of Skillshare Premium today. And thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring the show. Welcome back to The Ones Who Succeed. I'm Campbell Barron, and I'm about halfway through my conversation with Lyrebird co-founder Jose Sotelo. And so we're going to pick up right where we left off.
Actually, like our biggest publicity event in the life of Lyrebird was not neither of these things. That
it was not Bloomberg?
No, it was not Bloomberg. By an order of, I would say, like maybe 5 to 10 times bigger. It was just one YouTuber that created the video.
Can I guess? Was it Shane Dawson?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I remember seeing that. That's true. Yeah. So I want to ask you about that. So when Shane Dawson made that conspiracy video kind of cloning Lyrebird, and I mean, one of the big pickups with Lyrebird, especially in the early days, was you could certainly tell there was a difference, hearing it. If I had myself speak and then I played a Lyrebird video, there was definitely a difference. But it's when you get the phone involved that is where it becomes very tricky to distinguish the voice. How did you find out about the Shane Dawson Lyrebird video, and what was your growth spike?
Yeah, so I mean, let's say that we really realized when he released the video because our servers crashed.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, and our servers were designed like to be really scalable. So fortunately, like it was nothing too bad, and like it was like it took a few hours, but after then it was like ready to go. But yeah, for sure, this was like the way that we realized that something was weird, and so we had a lot of like people from people from YouTube coming to test the technology with their own voice. I think it was really cool. One bad thing is that a lot of these people like just wanted to try the technology to see how it sounded like, but like they really did not have like a reason to use something like this.
Right.
But one thing though that I would say is that was pretty beneficial for us is that a lot of people starting to create these kind of like videos of I copy my voice and I try to make prank calls with my voice as Shane Dawson. Yes. And so this was pretty, I mean, at least personally, let's say this was really funny because like you can go on YouTube and you can find some videos like that and they're pretty funny. And
well, it's actually a fun use case. Yeah. So that's very interesting. I forgot about that actually. And you probably are not allowed to say this, but did you receive any emails from any government authorities, including the FBI, RCMP, CSIS, CIA, asking about your technology and curious about it?
Yeah, so indeed I cannot speak about this, but I would say that
sure.
Yes, we have interest from, let's say, states and this kind of like more governments wanting to learn more about this. And we were really looking forward to have these conversations, and we put ourselves in positions to have these conversations, but more because we wanted to show them like what this was about so that they could potentially prepare for it. And we have had other initiatives like that. For instance, there are some researchers that work on trying to detect fake voices from real voices. And so, for instance, to them, we provided support and we provided data, which is really valuable.
Incredibly valuable. Yeah.
So we really care about like this technology not being used to create chaos in society, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Talk about some of the negative, the blowback you faced. I'm sure. Did you get any after the Shane Dawson video? And what did your friends and family think when you kind of told them I'm going to develop the startup to clone your voice? Were any of them weirded out?
Yeah. So this is for sure like a sensitive subject, and I think like one good thing for us as a company, but let's say bad thing to have these conversations, is that this kind of technology really creates an emotional impact on people. Like, you get scared, like when you realize like what could happen if someone could copy your voice.
Yeah. Or on the flip side, you get really excited, like me. I mean, and I think as being like a podcaster, and I think that's kind of like overdub is kind of my ideal use case, but yeah, go on.
Yeah. So we had a lot of like these kind of like difficult conversations, but I think whenever I spoke with people and I told them about why I thought that it was a good idea to do this, then people, after speaking with me, like they realized that it was not like a thoughtless decision, and that actually the arguments that I was giving made sense and they were not trivial. Like things like, you know, in which world would you prefer to live? Like in a world where like this kind of thing is open, it's available for everyone to know about like the existence of this technology, or in this group where this technology is going to be created anyways, probably with malicious purpose, but then people are going to have even the advantage that no one else knows about this kind of thing. So what I hope and what we hoped when releasing all this information and when being like really, or trying to be as transparent as we could in the development of this, was that this would really prevent the worst part of it. So when I spoke with people, and I spoke with people that really called me, "Oh, Jose, you are stupid. Like, what the hell are you doing?" After having these conversations, like usually they realize that it was not a bad idea as they thought.
Mm-hmm. So walk me through, and I'm sure as a company you definitely thought about this. What was the doomsday situation that would not only kill Lyrebird's brand, but would probably cause some mayhem in the world? I'm sure you had to think of like, well, let's aim for this not to happen. What was that situation? And this is totally hypothetical, and the listeners should understand that this is this won't happen now, and not with the Lyrebird technology, especially being part of Descript. But these things could be hackable. What was that? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm going to say one more thing before I go into this. One other advantage is that the technology, it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. So this thing, like as you said, like might fool you if you're on a telephone call. Yeah. But if like you get the time and like good headphones to listen to it carefully, like you will find traces of it being fake.
Yes.
So that being said, I think like the very worst case scenario would be of like, let's say, someone using this to clone the voice of, let's say, any president or something like that, and then using this artificial voice to
declare war.
Yeah, things like that, or to say some racist things. My point is that, like, I think this would have been really the worst case scenario for us, and I think this could have been really bad for the company and for us personally. And let's say that was one of the business reasons why we also implemented this like block of like not allowing people to copy the voice of the other people. And so that we will continue to do, and it's one of, let's say, the ethical principles that we have taken when we developed this technology in the past, in the present, and in the future. But I think that indeed it's really like that scenario is scary. One positive side of things, though, is that as time progresses and more people learn about this technology, there's like, I think even right now, implementations or like basic implementations of this kind of thing on GitHub. So as time progresses, like this technology will become more and more common to people. And I think that that's the thing that will really reduce the risk of really bad things happening. Like right now, for instance, with Photoshop, you have a similar kind of technology, but for a different context, in which like you are able to create pictures that did not exist before, and they can be really damaging, like to someone's identity or personality or something. And I think like this happens, unfortunately. Like this kind of like, let's say, technological tool is abused by some people to, for instance, bully some other young people and things like that. But I think that the let's say the really critical or like the biggest damages that this kind of thing could create are really limited by just the public knowledge that this kind of tool exists.
And I think if you kind of looked at the number one most beneficial feature in terms of this not being able to be taken advantage of, is the idea that someone might, when recording their voice, will say, I understand that my voice will be used in a synthetic manner, or something like that, right? I think the individual speech pattern and kind of the generated questions that are not all or the generated phrases that are not all the same almost serves as a password to your own voice. And I think that's really important. And I think that was great execution on your part. So if there's something I've learned from kind of talking with a lot of entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial journey is certainly not kind of a straight line to the top. It's a series of ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs, kind of back to back. And as a result, it can take an emotional toll on founders. So talk about the highest high, and then we'll get to the lowest low after that.
Yeah, so this is for sure an emotional roller coaster. And before you start a company, everyone will tell you that it's an emotional roller coaster. But I think like until you do it, like you will not realize like how roller coastery it will be. I don't know, like there were really, really exciting times. For instance, speaking with some really interesting people because of the company, or like when we raised our series of investment, that was also really cool times.
Yeah, your seed round, yeah.
When we launched the website and we saw people using it, or when we received like emails of people like really thanking us for putting this technology available. Like we saw, for instance, we worked with people with ALS and we allowed them to copy their voice, and they were extremely thankful because they got back something that they thought that was completely lost. So for sure there were like really great times, and there are still times like that in Descript. Descript is a pretty small company, so we are not aware of these times. But yeah, there's also like times that are really frustrating when things don't happen as you want them to happen. Or for instance, for us, like when we were looking for a specific use case for this technology, that was also pretty frustrating. So yeah, for sure there's a roller coaster that you go through.
I think from the outside, a lot of people might think that one would want to embark on an entrepreneurial journey to make money and make $1 billion app. But am I right in saying that the most kind of exciting and gratifying part about your journey building Lyrebird were basically seeing these incredible use cases come to life? Like you mentioned the ALS use case, and even just kind of building the company and seeing kind of your product being appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have $1 billion, so I cannot say how good or bad it feels to get $1 billion. But yeah, I think like there's a lot of value in the experience of it, even without thinking about the money. One thing that it's like, for instance, really life-changing for me, let's say, and I think that's probably the case for like most people that start companies, is that the people that you work with, like you learn to appreciate them in a different way. And like the relationship with people that were with you since the very beginning and that have gone through the struggles of this, like really, really gives you something to appreciate. So yeah, for sure there's like other sources of happiness in doing this besides the money.
I want to talk about the Descript acquisition. So this happened in 2019. And what was occurring at the company at the time of the acquisition? Did your viral growth curve kind of start to fade off and you were kind of looking to join a new company, or did Descript reach out to you? How did that kind of take place?
Yeah, so it was a bit of, let's say, the combination of a struggle to find a clear application of the technology. That was one. And the second one was that the CEO of Descript, Andrew Mason, is really an amazing person. And
yeah, the Groupon. He started Groupon, and then an audio company. What was it called?
Detour.
Yeah, Detour, and then built Descript. Yeah, I'm a fan.
So Andrew reached to us, and whenever we started the conversation with him, it was, I think, clear to us as founders of Lyrebird that the company would be stronger, like by working together with him to achieve like new goals. I think this was one of the really motivating factors of this decision. And like it has happened, let's say, almost 1 year since then. And I would say that like indeed this is one of like the reasons why it was a good idea to do this. Like working with Andrew is really a great thing to do, and we have learned a lot about like how to build a company, how to grow a company, how to create a cool culture inside the company. So I would say that at least it was not a bad idea to do that. We received a few acquisitions offers before this one. Actually, we received acquisition offers since like maybe 2 or 3 months after.
And why? And my question is, why did you feel compelled to turn down the original acquisition offers?
Yeah, because we were not really excited by them, or we were not interested so much in them. But it was never someone like Andrew asking to join to join them. So yeah, that was the context of it.
And so you talked to Andrew, you talked to Descript, and it's clear this definitely, you raised money, this technology, you kind of were wondering where it could go. It doesn't seem like this was a $1 billion acquisition because Descript is quite small at this point. And am I correct in saying the terms of the deal are not disclosed?
Yeah, they're not public.
But I'm sure you received some compensation for being a part of Descript, whether that is in terms of cash or stock. Did that at all change your life in any way, or did it financially relieve you a little bit? Because it seems like your family is not in Canada, or they're in Mexico. Am I correct about saying that? Yeah. So it seemed like you were on your own. So talk about the effects that had.
I mean, I did not start a company so much because of like the money involved with it. Like, to be honest, as a researcher in artificial intelligence, like the job conditions today are pretty good. So in general, like I was not, let's say, concerned as much with this. And also I have never had like a life, let's say, full of expensive luxuries. My favorite restaurant in the US is Chipotle, for instance.
Yeah, mine too.
But I mean, for sure it gives some like peace of mind, let's say, this financial side. And we did well in terms of the merger, in terms of the acquisition. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And what did your investors think in regards to the acquisition?
So actually, it was the reason we were connected with Andrew is because of our investors. So our investors are Andreessen Horowitz, which were also investors of Descript.
Yeah.
And so they were really excited about this happening, because, I mean, the reason for that is just that they see a lot of like synergies between the strengths that we had and the strengths that Descript had. For instance, Descript before did not have a, let's say, like super big team on working on AI, and now like most of our company were AI researchers, so it's a good match in that way.
And A16Z funded you raised $2 million. Did your investors get a little bit of a return, or did they get some stock? How did that work? Or was it just
it was more of like a stock deal.
Okay. And so you're right now an employee at Descript, and you're based in Montreal, and you resisted the urge and Descript is based in San Francisco, and you resisted the urge again to come out to San Francisco. Why again stay in Montreal?
Yeah, so again, the same reasons. It's not trivial to just like go and move to San Francisco. Like, actually, I have one interesting thing to say with respect to this, which is that...
Yeah, please.
Like, when you are young, like it's fun to move to new places, and I think it's really. And I have lived in like 4 or 5 cities, and I think it's a cool thing to move to different cities and to experience like different ways of living. But I also think that thinking long term, like it's not a bad idea to, let's say, once you are like 30 years old, or it depends like on each person, but once you reach a certain age, like, I don't think that it's still a great idea to be changing cities every 5 years, let's say, because it takes time to develop friendships. It takes time to develop relationships. It takes time to, let's say, become like Montrealer, let's say in this case, like
New Yorker, Torontonian, or exactly. San Francisco, or there must be a name.
So and one thing is that in this way, like in particular with San Francisco or with really expensive cities, it's a complicated thing because in these kind of places, like people go when they're young, like they go there to work there. But actually, like even let's say that you win the lottery and your startup becomes a unicorn and you become rich and you are able to afford like living there like in a really comfortable way. Even then, most of the people that you know are not going to stay there forever, and most of the people that you work with are going to move away from there. Mm-hmm. So at that point, like if you think about it like that, then it becomes a bit more complicated decision because then you don't take it like as in what it's like the most convenient for me today, but like where is the place that I want to be so that I can develop a life in that place. Yeah. And for that, let's say, decision, personally, I think Montreal, it's a bit superior to San Francisco, even if we got snow 3 weeks ago in May, which is something that you never get in San Francisco. So what I would say is that, like, as you become a bit older, I think like there's an associated cost with changing cities and with moving, and especially a social cost, which sometimes like people don't care about. They would be willing to pay this cost because they are just going to follow the most exciting opportunities that they get. But sometimes other people will consider it. I think that, I mean, as we have seen during these times of pandemic and everyone staying at home and everyone working remotely, like maybe these things will change like in the future because maybe like,
yeah, it doesn't matter where you are.
Exactly. Right. Which it's going to like if that happens, it's going to be a very different world, and it will have like also its problems. But I think that were some of the thoughts that I had in my mind when we decided to stay.
And so, I mean, I think that's, first of all, I'm a Canadian. I grew up in the US, but I live in Toronto now. I'm a big fan of Canadian startups. And so I think it's awesome that you guys are here. Do you plan on staying in Montreal for a while? Do you want to move somewhere else one day? Do you want to raise your family in Montreal?
Yeah, so right now I'm really happy living in Montreal. I think like it's a really good balance of like good quality of life and, let's say, culture, and not being like really expensive, and like having access to things that, let's say, things related to social systems.
For sure.
Like that.
Yeah, free healthcare.
So in general, I'm really happy living in Montreal. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay here for life because this is always a complicated thing. But I don't have plans to move as of now.
So in terms of Descript and your relationship there, does Descript have an official office in Montreal now because of your presence here?
Yeah, so I mean, the whole company stayed in Montreal, and so basically what we became, let's say, was like the research office of Descript.
Okay. Of Descript. And so you're working on overdub primarily. A few more questions. One is, how far are we from purely not being able to recognize my overdub voice, even just for a word, and in terms of your direct involvement with Descript, Lyrebird aside? How far are we from there, do you think?
I'm not sure if I get it, but do you mean like in terms of like people being able to something it's fake?
No. Well, I mean, look, Descript is Lyrebird, and I don't have the overdub beta. I'm on the wait list, but it seems like it's pretty damn good. But I'm sure there's some room for improvement. And at what point do you think it will be indistinguishable from my voice based on the series of phrases overdub trains?
Yeah, so I think that for one word or for one sentence, maybe a couple of sentences, I would say that sometimes it's really hard to say if something is fake or not, and I don't think that we're really really far away with respect to that. I think for long term, like long text generation, then it's a different thing, and it becomes a way more difficult problem, and like it's difficult to recognize like what's the right intonation that a person would use when they say a specific thing. Mm-hmm. But I would say that for short text generation, it's already, I would say that in ideal data conditions, like if I get, let's say, a couple of hours of your voice, in that case, like I would be able to generate something that you would not be able to tell apart all the time.
And my last question for you is, You're a smart guy. You're 29. You've still got many more years. Do you have another company in you post Descript?
Yeah, this is a difficult question. I'm considering it because I think it will depend on how it goes with Descript, and if it goes well, then I think I will probably do it, and if it does not go as well, then I will think about it more.
Yeah. And your success is linked with Descript's success in terms of stock.
Yeah, for sure. But also in terms of like emotional, let's say, well-being, like doing a company, it's really stressful, and you need like some kind of like some high amount of let's say resilience, which I thought that I had a lot when I started the company, but but I am, let's say, in the process of it being, let's say, recovering slowly. So we will see, but I don't discard this possibility.
It's not $1 billion company yet, but you made it out the other end. Congratulations, Jose. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk. This was great.
Thank you, Campbell. Thank you for the invitation.
That's Jose Sotelo, one of the ones who succeed. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, it'd be awesome if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Doing that helps new listeners discover the show. And another way to help new listeners discover the show is by telling a friend. If you do any one of those things, I really appreciate it. Thank you. If you want to stay up to date with the ones who succeed or what I'm working on, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Campbell J. Barron. You can check out my YouTube channel via my name, Campbell Barron. You've made it to the end of the show. Thank you for watching. Stay well, and I'll see you in the next one.